Welcome to this new Kurumi Raziel guide. We'll start with some general information about Raziel. Raziel deals dark damage. Upon entering combat, his critical rate and pierce rate are increased by 10%. When using skills, he increases the damage of all skills for 8 seconds, and the effect is stackable. To gain energy, you need to perform basic attacks or skills 1 and 2. When you have 100 energy points, you can use skill 3. The damage can vary depending on the accumulated energy. Note, keep in mind that this energy consumption can be reduced to 50 if you level up the skill 3 branch, but I only recommend it if you are triple S rank. Now let's move on to the Sephiras. The first Sephira says increases dark damage. When equipped by Raziel after using skill 3, he has a chance to recover energy. The effect activates every 5 seconds. I'll leave you with this example. As you can see, he was able to recover 50 energy points after casting skill 3. Now the second Sephira says, increases critical and piercing damage. When equipped on Raziel, it has a 5% chance to deal a pure damage hit. The effect can be activated every 2 seconds. Here's another example of pure damage. As you can see, this would be the pure damage hit, but as it says, it only has a 5% chance of activating it. The last Sephira says boosts attack, equipping it to Raziel. After casting derivative skills A or B gives you super armor, and the damage dealt by derivative skills is increased by 50%. Another example of derivative skills? As you can see, this would be the normal skill 1. This would be its derivative A. This would be the normal skill 1, and its derivative B. Normal skill 2, its derivative A. Normal skill 2, its derivative B. Only by casting the derived skills does he obtain the super armor as the Sephira says. The set's effect is slightly mistranslated in the global version, as it says when casting skills, but its correct translation is when dealing damage with skills. However, this would be its correct translation. When equipped to Raziel, each time he deals damage with skills, he has a 10% chance of applying a debuff that completely ignores the enemy's defense, meaning ignoring 100% of their defense. Additionally, 50% of the total piercing rate will be critical rate, and 50% of the total piercing damage will be critical damage. Note, this gives us a small spoiler for the Sephira's stats since they will mostly take piercing rate. Here are some examples so you can see how the defense ignore effect is activated. As you can see, when the enemy has this fist mark, it is because the ignore defense debuff is activated on the enemy. You can also use Raziel as a debuff. Just look at this example. This would be the damage of a queen without Raziel debuff. This would be queen damage with Raziel debuff. Like the Mia Takami and Valkyrie guides, these would be recommended Sephira if you didn't manage to get the Raziel set. This would be my personal recommendation for the Sephira stats. If they're 6 stars, it would be 7 piercing rates, 3 critical rates, 3 hit rates, 2 dark damage or damage versus spirit. If they're 5 stars, it would be 6 piercing rates, 3 critical rates, 2 hit rates, 1 dark damage or damage versus spirit. With that, we would conclude with the Sephiras. Now we move on to the skill tree. This would be my recommendation for the double S rank. As you can see, we'll only be using skills 1 and 2 and their derivatives. This would be my recommendation for the triple S rank, since we have already almost completely leveled up skills 1 and 2, and we also slightly leveled up skill 3 to reduce the energy consumed from 100 to 50 points. This would be my recommendation for the EX or FX rank without the Angel Break. As you can see, we already have skills 1 and 2 at the maximum, and we raise skill 3 a little more. This would be my recommendation for EX or FX with Angel Break. If you have Angel Break at level 10 to level 15, you can level up all 3 skills and leave the basic attack level up for last, since the basic attacks are hardly ever used. Now for the passives. The first one says, when attacking an enemy with the Precognition debuff, the enemy's piercing rate and critical rate increase by 3%, stacking 6 times, and the debuff lasts for 8 seconds. The second one says, each time you cast skills, attack power increases by 4%, stacking 10 times, and the effect lasts for 10 seconds. The third one says, when using skill 3, critical damage and piercing damage increase by 30%, the effect lasts for 8 seconds. The last passive one says, dark damage increases by 25% and piercing rate increases by 15%. This would be another recommendation if you wanted one-shot bosses or the Endless Corridor. As you can see, we almost maxed out skill 1, and skill 2 was almost maxed out, and we slightly boosted skill 3. Here are 2 passives for one-shot or Endless Corridor. The first says when you cast skill 3, each energy point consumed after 50 increases dark damage by 1% up to a maximum of 50% dark damage increase. That is, consume all 100 energy points to gain the maximum damage buff. In this second passive, what matters is the first text, which says, increases the damage of skills 1 and 2 by 25%. The other text isn't very necessary since, as we mentioned, we only want it for one shot, but I'll translate it for you, which says, these skills have a 25% chance of recovering 5 extra energy points. With that, we conclude the skill tree and its passives. Now for the pets. This would be her best pet, which is the butterfly. Since it gives attack and dealing dark damage increases the damage of skills. If you don't have this pet, you can add the scorpion. It still gives attack and increases hit rate. This pet is for general use. If you don't have one, add any of them. Now we move on to the Keepsakes. This would be their best combination. This one gives attack and defense. The Raziel exclusive gives more dark damage and critical rate, and this other one gives more critical rate. Now if you don't have any, you can put other sets on them or just pure Keepsakes, but that give high attack stats. Now we move on to the gems. This is the least important gem since we won't be using basic attacks. You can even leave it as last priority, but these would be the stats for said gems. The first stat would be attack speed or hit rate. The second stat would be pure damage. If the gem is triple S, it's optional. In the second stat, you can look for anti-crit, and in the third stat, you need to look for the attack bonus. This would be a good basic attack gem. These would be the recommended stats for skill 1. The first stat would be hit rate or pierce rate. The second stat would be skill cooldown. If the gem is triple S, it's optional to look for the anti-crit in the second stat, and the third stat would be the attack boost. This would be a good gem for skill 1. Recommended stats for skill 2. The first stat would be hit rate or pierce rate. The second stat would be skill cooldown. The third stat would be attack boost. This would be a good skill 2 gem. The recommended stats for skill 3. The first stat would be hit rate or pierce rate. The second stat, if the gem is double S, would be any stat, since no stat is useful. If the gem is triple S, you can go for the anti-crit. The third stat would be attack boost. This would be a good gem for skill 3. That concludes the gems. Same treasure formation as the guides of Mio Takamiya and Origami Valkyrie. Now we'll see how to use Raziel if we have a double S rank. Now we will see how to use Raziel if we have the EX or FX rank with the Angel Break at maximum. Now if you want to know about Raziel's damage, I recommend this video. Well, that concludes the Raziel guide. I hope you enjoyed it, and that I answered any questions you may have. See you next time, and goodbye.